The road that wasn't there. The desert at sunset is a beautiful, empty place. I was driving through Arizona, chasing the last of the orange light as it bled across the sky. My goal was to reach the interstate before full dark, but a construction detour had sent me down a long, lonely state road. My phone, my only navigator, had lost its signal an hour ago. I was running on fumes, both the car and myself. I saw the sign just as doubt was starting to set in. It was an old, sun-bleached wooden sign that simply read, "Gas, lodging, 5 miles." An arrow pointed down a narrow, paved road that branched off to the right. It wasn't on my paper map, but my gas gauge was hovering on it. I had no choice. I turned. The road was surprisingly smooth, cutting through the desert like a black ribbon. But after about 10 minutes, a strange, thick fog began to roll in. It was unnatural for the desert, cold and dense, coiling over the road and reducing my world to the 30 feet in front of my bumper. The air grew chilly, and I had to turn on the heat. I drove for what felt like another 20 minutes, my anxiety growing. There was no gas station, no lights, just the fog and the endless, straight road. I was about to turn around when I saw a glow ahead. As I got closer, the fog thinned, and I found myself driving into a small, quiet town. It looked like something from an old movie. The buildings were a mix of Old West facades and 1950s-style diners, all perfectly preserved. Soft yellow light spilled from the windows, and old-fashioned street lamps lit the clean, empty streets. A sign on the way in read, "Welcome to Serenity, Arizona. Population 342. Relief washed over me. It was quaint, but it had to have a gas station. I pulled over on the main street and got out. The air was cold and still, and the silence was profound. I could hear my own footsteps echo. I saw people, but they were still. A man in a hat was frozen in the act of sweeping the sidewalk outside a barber shop. A woman stood by a car, her hand eternally. A bell jingled overhead. The diner was pristine. Red vinyl booths, a gleaming chrome counter, the smell of fresh coffee and pie. And it was full of people. But like the people outside, they were frozen. A waitress was pouring coffee for a man in a booth, the stream of liquid suspended in mid-air, never reaching the cup. A couple was laughing, their mouths open in silent joy. The music box on the counter played its endless, looping tune. "Please," I whispered to the frozen waitress. "Can you help me?" Her eyes, a bright, glassy blue, shifted to look at me. I stumbled back with a gasp, my heart hammering against my ribs. She didn't move her head. Only her eyes tracked my movement. A slow, deliberate blink. Then, her head began to turn, her neck creaking like old, dry wood. The sound echoed in the silent diner. All around me, the other figures began to move, not with life, but with the jerky, unnatural motion of puppets. Their heads swiveled in unison, their painted-on smiles never changing, their empty eyes fixing on me. The man at the counter, whose coffee was still frozen in the air, slowly stood up. His joints popped and cracked. "You're new," he said, but his lips didn't sync with the words. The voice was flat, without emotion, and seemed to come from all around me. I need gas. My car broke down," I stammered, backing toward the door. "You're here now," the waitress said in that same hollow, disembodied voice. Her smile widened, stretching her skin taut. "You can stay. We always have room." I turned and ran, shoving the door open so hard the glass cracked. Outside, the scene had changed. The frozen people on the street were now moving, their stiff, shuffling gaits carrying them toward the diner, toward me. Their faces were still locked in pleasant, normal expressions, a smile, a look of curiosity. But their movements were predatory. They were herding me. I sprinted down an alley, my breath coming in ragged sobs. The fog was thicker here, clinging to me like cold, wet hands. I could hear their shuffling footsteps behind me, getting closer. I burst out onto another street and saw a small, old gas station. Then I saw the photographs, dozens of them, pinned to a corkboard. They were all of people, terrified people, in different eras of clothing. A man in a 70s disco shirt, a woman in 90s grunge flannel. They all had the same wild, trapped look in their eyes. And in the background of each photo, barely visible, were the smiling, frozen faces of the townspeople. They were trophies. This wasn't a town. It was a trap. A thing that existed off the map, feeding on lost travelers. The doorknob behind me began to jiggle, then a soft, polite knock. "Open the door, son," said the flat voice of the man from the diner. "It's time to join the community." I looked around desperately. There was a back window, sealed shut with layers of paint and grime. I grabbed a rusty tire iron from a corner and smashed the glass. The sound was explosively loud. I scrambled out, cutting my hands on the shards, and ran into the desert behind the station, not caring about the direction, only caring about getting away from the lights of that horrible town. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I collapsed behind a large rock, hiding, listening. I heard nothing but the wind. When I finally dared to look back, the town was gone. There were no lights, just the empty, moonlit desert and the road I came in on. It took me all night to walk back to the main road, where I was finally found by a highway patrol officer at dawn. He didn't believe my story. No one did. They found my car, abandoned and perfectly fine, its engine starting on the first try. There was no record of a town called Serenity, Arizona. Ever. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm driving, I'll see an old faded sign on the side of the road. GASLODGING. And if the fog is just right, I think I can hear the faint, cheerful tune of a music box. I always lock my doors, press the accelerator to the floor, and pray that the road doesn't decide to take me there again. Because I know the wrong turn. The rain started suddenly, a thick, noisy curtain falling from the dark sky, turning the road ahead into a dangerous blur. I was traveling alone, returning from a quick visit to a client in a small inland town, and now I just wanted to get home. My phone's GPS flickered once, twice, and then the screen went black. Damn it. The charger had stopped working, and I was in the middle of nowhere. Just great. Simply great, I muttered to myself, gripping the steering wheel tighter. I had an old paper map in the glove compartment, a relic from my grandfather's time, but I trusted technology more. Now, with no choice, I pulled over to the side of the road, the rain drumming on the car roof like 1,000 tiny drums, and popped the glove box open. The map was yellowed and smelled of dust and time. I was trying to locate myself, looking for a sign or a landmark, when I saw a detour I didn't remember seeing before. It was a narrow dirt road that seemed to open through a dense wall of dark trees. In a flash of optimism, I thought it might be a shortcut. Maybe it would bypass the area of bad reception and lead me back to the main road. It was a foolish thought, I know, but the darkness was growing and the rain showed no mercy. I turned the wheel and entered the dirt road. It was like entering another world. The tree branches intertwined overhead, forming a tunnel that blocked almost all the remaining twilight light. The rain dripped through this canopy, but the noise on the car roof diminished to a wet whisper. The road was winding, full of potholes that made the car sway and jolt. I looked at the map again, spreading it out on the passenger seat. I looked for the road, for any line that matched my path. There was nothing. The road simply was not on the map. A chill that had nothing to do with the temperature began to creep up my spine. Just a little further, I said out loud, to fight the oppressive silence. It has to come out somewhere. I kept driving for another 20 minutes, but the road only seemed to go deeper into the forest. The darkness was now complete, and my headlights cut 2 cones of weak light through the rain and the fog that was beginning to form between the trees. It was then that I saw the lights.
I accelerated, and soon the trees opened up. I was on the edge of a small settlement. It was a strangely quiet place. The houses were made of old wood, with roofs sagging in some places. The dirt streets had turned to mud with the rain. There were no cars, no people. The lights I had seen came from gas lamps fixed on posts along the main street, their flames flickering and casting dancing, distorted shadows on the building facades. I stopped the car in front of what looked like a central square. There was a well in the middle and a rotting wooden bench. The feeling of relief vanished, replaced by a tightness in my chest. This place was empty. But not just empty. It seemed abandoned for decades. Who would be keeping the lamps lit? I turned off the engine. The silence was absolute, broken only by the constant dripping of rain from the branches and onto my car roof. Then, a door creaked. The door of a house across the square opened slowly. A figure stepped out onto the porch. It was a man, his posture hunched, and he wore dark, worn-out clothes. He didn't move, he just stood there, looking at my car. I took a deep breath. I needed help, directions. I opened the door and got out, the mud clinging to my shoes. "Hello?" My voice sounded muffled and weak in the open space. "I'm lost. I need directions to the highway." The man didn't answer. He made no sound. He simply descended the slow steps of the porch and began to walk towards me. His gait was strange, dragging as if he were in pain. As he approached, moving out of the deeper shadow of the porch and into the flickering light of the street lamp, I could see his face. It was pale and still, his eyes dark and empty. He didn't seem to be seeing me, but rather through me. A shiver ran through my body. Something was terribly wrong. "Please," I said, my voice trembling now. "I just need directions." He stopped a few meters from me. His lips parted, but the sound that came out was not a word. It was a dry, snarling whisper, like the rustling of dead leaves. A low sound began to emanate from them. It wasn't a murmur nor a song. It was a faint, dissonant buzz, like that of a distant swarm of insects. The sound grew, filling the air, entering my head. It was maddening. I turned to jump back into the car, but my keys had fallen into the mud. As I bent down to pick them up, I saw their feet. They weren't sinking into the mud. They were hovering just above it, their boots and shoes immaculate, without a stain. They weren't people. They weren't alive. Blind panic took over me. I grabbed the keys, my hands shaking so much I could barely open the door. The buzzing was now a roar in my ears. I threw myself inside, locked the doors, and started the car. The engine caught with a roar. The figures did not try to stop me. They just moved aside, opening a path, their faces still expressionless. That first man was still pointing towards the dark alley. I didn't think twice. I slammed on the accelerator. The car skidded in the mud for a terrifying moment before its tires found traction and it shot forward, passing through the middle of the crowd of ghosts. I didn't look back. I drove back down the dirt road, my heart in my throat, tears of terror and confusion streaming down my face.
When I finally, after an eternity, saw the lights of the main road ahead, I almost cried with relief. I emerged from the tunnel of trees and turned onto the familiar asphalt, speeding as fast as the car would go. It was only when I was several miles away that I dared to slow down. The rain had stopped. My hands were still shaking on the wheel. I looked in the rearview mirror, expecting to see only the dark road behind me. But I saw something else. There, reflected in the mirror, sitting in the back seat of my car, was the figure of a pale child. One of those from the square. She was looking directly at me in the reflection, her eyes dark as pools. She made no movement. She just sat there, in silence. And then, on the fogged glass of the mirror, with a pale, translucent finger, she slowly drew a single word before disappearing.